Stay calm. Walk with me." Elijah Brooks said it quietly, the way a man speaks when he knows shouting would get them both killed. Ava Harrington stopped on the marble step, her driver waiting 15 feet away beside a black SUV polished to a mirror shine. She almost laughed. She almost called security. Instead, something in the gardener's eyes made her follow him behind the hedge. He whispered 6 words. She looked back at the SUV and noticed one small detail that turned her blood to ice water. The 6 words Elijah whispered were these: "That is not your driver, ma'am." Ava's eyes went back to the SUV. The man standing beside it wore the dark suit, the white shirt, the polished black shoes of every driver she had ever employed. He held the door at the correct angle. He had the correct posture. He looked in every measurable way exactly like the man who had driven her to the airport every Tuesday and Thursday for 11 years. But his left hand resting against the doorframe was bare. Marcus had been married to the same woman for 31 years. In all that time, Ava had never once seen him without his wedding band. He had told her the second week he worked for her that he had not removed it since the day his wife slipped it on him. He used to laugh and say the ring had grown into his finger. The man at the door had smooth, unmarked hands. Ava felt something cold travel down her spine and settle in the small of her back. She did not move. She did not breathe. She just looked at the empty space on the stranger's finger and understood all at once that the morning she had planned was not the morning she was inside of. Elijah's hand touched her elbow very lightly. "Come with me," he said. "Slow. Don't look back." She walked. To anyone watching from the front gate, it would have appeared that the lady of the house had simply remembered something inside that the gardener was politely escorting her around to the kitchen entrance. Ava had spent 20 years training her face to give nothing away in negotiations worth hundreds of millions of dollars. She used every hour of that training in the 40 seconds it took to reach the hedge. Once they were behind it, she stopped. Her hands were shaking. "Tell me everything," she said. "Now." Elijah looked at her. He was a tall man, lean from years of physical work, his hair close cropped and starting to gray at the temples. Ava had passed him in the garden 1,000 times over 6 years and had never once stopped to look at his face. She looked now. There was something in his expression she had not expected to find in a man she barely knew, a steady, exhausted decency. "My daughter heard them talking last night," he said. "In the greenhouse. 2 men. One of them was Mr. Cole." The name hit Ava like a slow wave. Ethan, her fiancé. The man who had eaten breakfast across from her 90 minutes earlier and kissed her forehead before she walked out the door. "Heard them say what?" Elijah's voice did not change. He told her plainly the way a man tells a doctor where it hurts. He told her that his daughter Maya, 9 years old, had been sitting in the back of the greenhouse doing her homework because the lamp in their cottage had burned out. He told her that 2 men had come into the garden near midnight thinking the place was empty. He told her what Maya had remembered: the morning car, an empty warehouse, 48 hours until the insurance pays out, and the sentence that had made the little girl press her hand against her mouth: "I have endured her for 2 years. Not much longer." Ava listened with the strange calm of someone watching her own house burn from a great distance. "That could mean anything," she said when he was done. "A child." She could have misunderstood. "Yes, ma'am." She could have. Maybe she heard a movie. Maybe. He did not argue with her. He did not press. He simply stood there with his hands at his sides and waited for her to walk past him back to the SUV, if that was what she chose. That was in some way the moment that broke her composure more than anything else. Ava Harrington had spent 15 years surrounded by people who fought to be believed, who pushed, who insisted, who needed her trust in order to take something from her. The man in front of her was asking for nothing. He had simply come to tell her, and if she did not believe him, he was going to go back to his work. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "You could lose your job. You could lose everything." Elijah considered the question for a moment. "If I'm wrong, ma'am, you miss a flight." If I'm right and you get in that car, there isn't a next time." She did not have an answer for that. Behind them in the great house was the life she had built one careful brick at a time. 47,000 square feet of marble and walnut, a private gallery, 2 pools, a wine cellar her late husband had spent 4 years curating before the heart attack that took him at 53. 8 years a widow. 8 years of waking up at 5:30 in the morning, drinking the same Earl Grey from the same porcelain cup, dressing in one of 7 nearly identical Navy suits, riding the same route to the same airfield, where her plane waited to take her to the same kind of meeting, where she made the kind of decisions that moved markets in 3 countries. 8 years of treating predictability the way other widows treated grief. Something to organize her days around, something to keep her from drowning. And inside the house, somewhere upstairs, was Ethan Cole, who had walked into her life 2 years before at a children's hospital benefit and asked her on a balcony where she had retreated to escape the room whether she was all right standing alone for so long. He had been the first person in 5 years to ask her a question that was not about money. She had cried in the cab on the way home. She had not told anyone. She thought about him now, the way he poured her tea in the morning, the way he remembered the anniversary of her husband's death and brought white peonies, her late husband's favorite, without being asked, the way he listened to her describe her work and asked the right follow-up questions, the way he had, over the course of 1 year, become the only person on earth she did not have to perform around. And she thought about the bare hand of the stranger at the SUV door. "Mr.?" She stopped because she did not know his name. "Brooks. Elijah Brooks." "Mr. Brooks, how long have you worked here?" 6 years next month." 6 years, Ava repeated. The words felt strange in her mouth. She had owned the dinner forks in her dining room for less time than she had owned the labor of the man standing in front of her, and she had never once asked him his name. "I want you to show me something," she said. He hesitated. "What do you want to see?" "Whatever you have, whatever else you noticed. I want to know whether your daughter is mistaken, and I want to know now." He nodded once. Then he led her along the back of the hedge, away from the front of the house toward the long glass walls of the greenhouse where his daughter studied in the evenings. The greenhouse stood at the far end of the rose garden, half shaded by an old magnolia. Behind it ran a narrow service path Ava had not walked in years. Elijah stopped where the path bent and pointed back through a gap in the boxwoods. From that angle, the rear terrace of the main house was visible, the slate steps, the wrought iron table, the pair of teak chairs. Ethan was standing at the table. He was not alone. The woman with him was perhaps 30 years old, dark-haired, in a cream-colored coat too thin for the morning air. Ava had never seen her before. She watched her fiancé take the woman's face in both hands, the way he had taken Ava's face the night he proposed, and kiss her with a tenderness that did not look like an affair. It looked older than that. It looked like a marriage that had been waiting on the other side of a closed door. Their voices reached her only in pieces, carried thin by the wind. The woman said something Ava could not hear. Ethan's reply was clearer. "Only today. Just get in the car and it's done. 2 years I've been waiting for this morning." 2 years. Ava had been engaged to him for 14 months. They had been together for 2 years and 1 week. She did not feel her own breathing. She did not feel her own hands. She had the strange, dissociated sense of watching a film about a woman she used to know. The woman in the film had spent 2 years rebuilding herself around the love of a man who it turned out had been counting the days until her funeral. She looked at Elijah. He was not looking at the terrace. He was looking at the ground in front of him the way a man looks when he wants to give someone privacy inside their own grief. "What else?" Ava said. Her voice came out remarkably level. "You said there were details about the driver." "His shoes," Elijah said. "Mr. Marcus wears the same pair of leather Oxfords, always polished. The man at the door has sneakers under the suit pants, black ones, soft soles. He opened the car door with his left hand. Mr. Marcus always uses his right. Mr. Marcus has a small scar on the back of his right hand from cutting himself on a window 10 years ago. That man's hands are clean. You noticed all of that this morning? Yes, ma'am. Why, because my daughter told me what she heard, and I needed to know whether to believe her enough to risk telling you. Ava turned the words over in her mind. She thought of all the people she paid each year to protect her: her security firm, her in-house counsel, her chief of staff, her insurance broker, her wealth manager, her 2 personal assistants, her driver, her housekeeper, her cook, her event coordinator, her press team. By her own rough count, more than 30 people drew salaries every month for the express purpose of keeping her safe and her affairs running. Not one of them had noticed that the man at her gate this morning was a stranger. A gardener and a 9-year-old girl had noticed. "Where is your daughter now?" she asked. "In the cottage. I told her to stay inside until I came back." "I want to meet her." Elijah hesitated for the second time that morning. It was not Ava realized hesitation about her request. It was the hesitation of a father about to let a powerful stranger into the room where his only child was waiting. "Yes, ma'am," he said finally. "But may I ask you something first?" "Of course." "What are you going to do?" Ava looked back through the gap in the hedge. Ethan was walking the woman around the side of the house toward the service drive, his arm around her waist, his face turned to hers in a way Ava could not remember him ever turning to her. The intimacy of it was almost worse than the betrayal. He looked with this stranger like a man who had finally come home. "I am going to live through this morning," Ava said. "I have not decided about anything after that." The cottage sat at the far edge of the property behind the greenhouse, half hidden by an old stand of cedars. Ava had never been inside it. She had in fact forgotten that it was there. When Elijah opened the door for her, she stepped into a single room with a small kitchen along one wall, a round table with 2 chairs, and a worn but well-kept sofa under a window full of morning light. The girl was sitting at the table with a math workbook open in front of her. She looked up when they came in. She had her father's careful eyes, brown and very steady, and a green ribbon tied at the end of one of her braids. "Maya," Elijah said. "This is Mrs. Harrington." The girl studied Ava for a moment, the way a small animal studies a larger one. Then she stood up and walked over to the kitchen counter, filled a clean glass with water from the tap, and brought it to her. "Are you okay?" Maya asked. Ava took the glass. Her hand was steady, which surprised her. She had not been asked that question in those exact words in 8 years. Not by anyone. Not by Ethan in the 2 years he had been planning very carefully to ensure that she never would be again. "Thank you," she said. She drank the water because she did not know what else to do. The girl watched her drink it. Then Ava set the glass down and crouched slowly so that her face was level with the girl's. The pencil skirt she wore was not made for crouching, but she did not care. "Maya," she said, "I need you to tell me in your own words what you heard last night. Take your time. Don't leave anything out, even if you think it's small." The girl glanced at her father. Elijah nodded. She told Ava everything. The hour she had stayed late in the greenhouse, the lamp at home being broken, the 2 men coming in through the side gate, the way she had pressed herself flat into the shadow behind the potting bench because she did not want them to be angry with her for being there past her bedtime. She told her about the words she had not understood at the time. 48-hour clause, body of work, beneficiary. She told her about the words she had understood. The morning car, the warehouse off Route 9, no witnesses. And she told her more quietly about the last thing she had heard before they left. "The other man asked your husband whether he was sure," Maya said. "And your husband said, 'I have endured her for 2 years. Not much longer.'" "He is not my husband," Ava said. It came out gentler than she had expected. "He sounded like he wanted to be done," Maya said. "Like when I have to finish a worksheet I don't like." Ava felt her eyes sting. She did not let it show. She placed her hand very lightly on top of the girl's hand on the table. Maya did not pull away. "You did the right thing telling your father," Ava said. "You may have saved my life. My dad said you would know what to do." "Did he?" "He said grown-ups don't always listen to kids, but you would." Ava looked up at Elijah. He was standing very straight by the door, watching his daughter, and there was something in his face she could not put a name to. She rose. Her knees protested. She turned to Elijah. "Mr. Brooks," she said, "I am going to make a great many decisions in the next several hours. I need to ask you to help me with some of them. I will pay you for your time. I will pay you whatever you ask." "You don't have to pay me," he said. "I know I don't have to." "Then please don't." She looked at him. "If you pay me for this," Elijah said, "then for the rest of my life I will wonder whether I told you because it was right or because there was money in it. I would like to be able to know which it was." Ava thought about all the rooms she had walked into in her life, the boardrooms, the galas, the Senate hearings, the weddings she had attended the previous spring where the bride's father had cornered her by the bar to discuss a tax shelter. She had not in any of those rooms heard a sentence like the one this man had just said to her. "All right," she said. "Then I am asking you not as your employer, but as a woman who has nowhere else to start this morning. Will you help me?" "Yes, ma'am." There is something worth sitting with in the middle of this morning before the rest of what is coming. The first person who truly saw the danger around Ava Harrington was not her head of security, not her attorney, not the man who slept on the other side of her bed. It was a gardener she had never spoken to, and a 9-year-old child she had not known existed. Perhaps it is true that the closer a person stands to wealth, the more they get used to looking at large things and missing the small ones. They learn to trust the system, the bodyguard at the door, the lawyer on retainer, the fiancé who knows the date their late husband died. And then one day the system fails because every part of it has been quietly purchased from the inside, and the only thing left between them and the dark is a man who works for $40,000 a year and his daughter who does her homework in a greenhouse. There is something to say, too, about how a person becomes valuable in this world. Sometimes it has nothing to do with where they stand on the ladder. It has to do with whether they are willing to tell you the truth on a morning when the truth could cost them everything they have built and walk away if you choose not to listen. Most people given a chance to keep their job by staying quiet will stay quiet. A few will not. And it turns out in the long run of a life, those few are the only people who matter. The first thing Ava did, sitting at the small round table in the cottage with Maya's math workbook still open beside her elbow, was call the airfield and cancel the flight. She did it from Elijah's landline, not her own phone. She had begun in the last 20 minutes to assume that every device she owned had been compromised. She told her pilot she had developed a migraine and would reschedule for the following morning. Her pilot, who had flown her for 9 years and knew that Ava Harrington had never canceled a flight for any reason short of a hospital bed, said only, "Of course, ma'am," and hung up. Ava made a note to remember the steadiness in his voice. She would need to know in the coming days which of her people were hers. Then she called Patricia Lender. Patricia had been her personal attorney for 16 years. She was 64 years old, divorced, twice allergic to almost everything, and was the only human being on earth Ava had ever fully trusted with a signature. Patricia answered on the second ring. "Ava." "Patricia, I need you to come to the cottage behind the greenhouse, not the main house. Tell no one you are coming. Bring whatever you would bring if you were preparing to file an emergency restraining order, and bring it without telling your own office why." There was a brief silence on the line, the kind of silence Patricia gave when she was already 3 steps into solving a problem. "Who is it?" Patricia said. "Ethan." "I will be there in 40 minutes. Patricia arrived in 32. She did not knock. She let herself in through the side gate, walked the long way around the rose garden so no one in the main house would see her, and sat down at the round table with the air of a woman who had been waiting for this phone call for some time without admitting it to herself. She listened to the whole of it without interruption. The driver, the shoes, the ring, the terrace, the woman in the cream coat, Maya's testimony, which Ava asked the girl to repeat once more slowly so that Patricia could write it down. Patricia wrote in a small leather notebook with a fountain pen the way she had written for 40 years. When Maya was done, Patricia closed the notebook and looked at Ava over the rim of her glasses. "How much access does he have?" Patricia said. "To what?" "Everything." Ava felt something tighten in her chest. She had known the answer before Patricia asked the question. She had known it in some quiet part of herself for months. She just had not let the knowledge come up into the lit rooms of her mind. "He has signatory authority on the household accounts," Ava said. "He has access to my calendar and my flight schedule. He has the codes to the home system. He was added as a secondary on the insurance policy last March. He has the password to the family trust portal because I gave it to him in February when I was sick with the flu and asked him to handle a wire." "Anything else?" "He was named as a co-trustee on a side trust I set up last year for tax purposes." "How much is in that trust?" "Roughly 80 million. Patricia took her glasses off, set them on the table, and rubbed the bridge of her nose with 2 fingers. Then she put the glasses back on and opened her notebook again. "All right," she said. "Here is what we know. He cannot kill you in the house because the medical examiner would find traces of a struggle and the insurance investigators would tear the policy apart. He needs you to leave the property of your own accord in a vehicle he controls and end up somewhere with no security footage. That is what this morning was, which means he has spent 6 months, possibly longer, setting up the geography that makes today possible. There will be a paper trail, wire transfers, a burner phone, visits to specific locations. The man he hired is not a professional, or he would not have used someone connected enough to be traceable. Real professionals are expensive, and Mr. Cole, I would guess, is short on liquid funds. Why do you assume he is short on funds? Because if he had money of his own, he would have left you a year ago. Men like Ethan Cole only stay when the path out is more expensive than the path through." Ava sat with that for a long moment. She had spent 2 years believing she was loved by a man, with the patience to wait for her to be ready for love again. The truth, when Patricia spoke it, that simply was somehow both unbearable and a relief. The relief was the worst part. It meant that some piece of her somewhere very far down had already known. "What do you need from me?" Ava said. "Time. A day, maybe 2. I will use a private investigator we have used once before, a man I trust. He will not file anything in writing. He will give me a list of accounts and movements. I will give it to a contact at the bureau off the record and ask whether they want to be helpful. They will. You are the kind of victim the United States Attorney's Office likes to have in a press release. And in the meantime..." "In the meantime, Ava, you are going to do the hardest thing you have ever done in your life." "What is that?" "You are going to walk back into that house. You are going to tell Mr. Cole that you have come down with a migraine. You are going to apologize for canceling the flight. You are going to let him pour you a glass of water and rub your shoulders and ask whether you would like him to draw a bath. And you are going to behave for the next 24 to 48 hours exactly the way you have behaved for the last 2 years. You are going to be the woman he thinks he has been killing slowly, because the moment he suspects you know every piece of evidence we need will disappear, and so will he." Ava felt the room tilt very slightly. She put her palms flat on the table to steady herself. "I am not sure I can do that." "You can," Patricia said. "You have been performing for boards of directors since you were 31 years old. You know how to keep your face still. This is the same skill. It is only the stakes that are different. And Mr. Brooks, and Maya." Patricia looked at Elijah, who had been standing very quietly by the kitchen counter the entire time, then at the girl who was pretending to read her math workbook and was clearly listening to every word. "They cannot stay here tonight," Patricia said. "If Mr. Cole sees Mr. Brooks within 50 feet of you between now and the arrest, he will put it together. There is a small house I keep in Carmel that is empty at the moment. They will be safer there. I will arrange a car. The driver is my brother-in-law. He is reliable. Elijah cleared his throat for the first time since Patricia had arrived. I would prefer to stay close, ma'am. If something happens here, I would rather not be 3 hours away. I understand that, Patricia said. It is not a request. He looked at Ava. She nodded once. All right, he said. It was at this moment, watching Elijah accept being sent away from a fight he had started for her, that Ava felt the first of the small doubts. It came up in her not as suspicion exactly, but as a kind of old reflex from a life lived in rooms where everyone wanted something. She turned it over in her mind quickly, almost shamefully, before she heard herself speak. Mr. Brooks, may I ask you a question? Yes, ma'am. How much would it take for someone to have paid you to walk up to me this morning and tell me a story about a driver and a daughter and a terrace? Patricia's head came up sharply. Maya looked up from her workbook. Elijah did not move. He looked at Ava for what felt like a very long time. There was no anger in his face. There was something worse than anger. There was a recognition, gentle and a little tired of the kind of life that produced a question like the one she had just asked. Mrs. Harrington, he said, if I wanted money from you, there were easier ways to ask for it than this. I have worked here for almost 6 years. In all that time, I have not asked you for a raise. I have not asked you for a recommendation. I have not asked you to remember my name. If I wanted to take something from you, I have had 1,000 mornings to do it. He did not say anything else. He did not need to. Ava sat very still in her chair. Then she did something she had not done in a long time. She apologized to a person who worked for her. I am sorry, she said. That question was not worthy of either of us. You have had a hard morning, Elijah said. People say things on hard mornings. That is generous of you. It is not generous. It is true. Patricia closed her notebook. All right, she said. Mr. Brooks, please pack a bag for yourself and your daughter, enough for 3 days. My driver will be here in 1 hour. Ava, please go back to the main house now. You have been gone over an hour. If Mr. Cole asks where you have been, tell him you were walking the south lawn because you felt dizzy. Tell him you sat down by the fountain and lost track of time. He will believe me. He will believe you. He is the kind of man who believes everything that flatters his plans. Ava walked back to the main house, the long way through the side garden, past the koi pond she had not stopped to look at in years. She arranged her face. By the time her hand touched the brass handle of the kitchen door, she was the woman she needed to be. Ethan was in the sitting room with a cup of coffee reading something on his tablet. He looked up when she came in, and the expression that moved across his face was so perfectly calibrated, so exactly the right blend of concern and warm relief that for one terrible second she almost doubted everything she had seen. There you are, he said. He stood up and crossed the room and put his hands on her arms and looked at her with what an outside observer would have called love. Sweetheart, your office called. They said you canceled the flight. Are you all right? Migraine, Ava said. I am sorry. I walked outside thinking the air would help. I lost track of time. You should have called me. I would have come and gotten you. I know. I am sorry. He led her to the sofa. He brought her a glass of cold water. He put a small pillow behind her neck. He turned the lamp off and drew the curtains halfway. He asked whether she wanted ibuprofen or her stronger pills. He sat down beside her and rubbed slow circles on the back of her hand with his thumb. For 2 years, Ava had felt these small gestures as proof that she was loved. She felt them now as a map. He was rubbing her hand the way a man rubs the head of a horse he is about to lead into a particular stall. He was drawing the curtains the way a man closes the door on a room he is finished with. Every small kindness suddenly looked like a measurement he was taking. I love you, he said. I love you too, she answered. The hours of the afternoon and evening that followed were the longest of Ava's adult life. She lay on the sofa. She let Ethan make her soup. She ate 3 spoonfuls and pushed the bowl away and apologized. She let him kiss her temple. She told him she was going to bed early. She let him walk her up the staircase with his arm around her waist. She let him tuck the blanket up to her chin. He kissed her forehead. "Tomorrow will be better," he said. "I promise you. Tomorrow you will feel like yourself again." She closed her eyes until she heard him leave the room. Then she lay in the dark for 40 minutes, listening until she was certain he had gone down to his study to make his evening calls. After that, she got out of bed, walked barefoot down the back staircase, and let herself into the small sitting room beside his office, where he kept his laptop on the writing desk. He had not closed it. She sat in his leather chair and woke the screen. His password was the date of their first dinner together. He had told her the night he proposed that it was the most important date in his life. She had cried. She typed it in now with steady fingers, and the screen unlocked. She did not have long. She did not have much. She had a name in mind already, the name of the woman on the terrace, but she did not yet know it. She opened his email and searched for words she expected to find. Insurance, trust, 48, warehouse. None of them returned anything. He had been careful with the searchable words. Then she tried something else. She searched for the word finally. It returned an email thread from someone named Sarah Ellis. The address was a private one, not connected to a workplace. The most recent message had been sent 3 weeks earlier. Sarah had written, "After this is done, will you actually leave her? Or am I waiting in the dark again, like I did the last time for another year of promises?" Ethan had written back, "You are the only real thing in my life. The last 2 years have been a performance. I am tired. I am almost done." There were 43 messages in the thread going back 19 months. Ava read them with the strange composure of a surgeon reading a chart. She learned that Sarah Ellis had been Ethan's girlfriend in his last year of college, 12 years earlier. She learned that he had broken up with her in a letter after he had decided to marry a woman whose father owned 3 car dealerships. That marriage had ended in a settlement that left him with nothing. She learned that Sarah had reconsidered him 18 months ago after his gambling debts had ballooned past the point where any normal life was possible. She learned that he owed $4,100,000 to a man in Atlantic City named Devlin, who did not extend payment plans. She learned that the original plan, had been only a divorce, but that Ava's prenuptial agreement had been written by Patricia and was unbreakable, and the calculations had changed in the spring. She read the email in which he had written 6 months earlier, "She is so predictable. She does the same things at the same times every day. It is almost as if she wants someone to do this for her." Ava sat with that sentence for a long time. She did not feel rage. Rage would come later and would be a relief when it came. What she felt sitting in his chair in the small lamp-lit room with her bare feet on the cold floor was something quieter and harder to name. She felt the recognition of a long mistake. She had loved this man. She had also, without admitting it to herself, been relieved by him. He had organized her widowhood for her. He had filled the hours. He had given her something to come home to. She had handed him her schedule, her codes, her trust, her signature, the way a tired woman hands her coat to a doorman. And she had told herself it was love because the alternative was loneliness, and at 52, after 8 years of public composure, she had not been brave enough to choose loneliness again. It is worth saying here in the middle of this long night what is true and what is unkind, and what is both. There are women in the world who are killed by men because those men are monsters, and there was nothing the women could have done. There are also women who, in the long, unguarded years of their own grief, build lives so predictable that any reasonably patient man can walk into them and learn the locks. Ava Harrington had spent 8 years making herself easy to find. The Tuesday flights, the same suit, the same tea, the same route, the same trusted fiancé with the same untested promises. She had not deserved what was being done to her. No one deserves what was being done to her. but she had built the conditions under which it became possible, and somewhere in the dark of that small room she allowed herself to know it. Not as guilt. As a kind of clarity she had refused to look at for a long time. She copied everything to a small drive she had brought down with her. 43 emails, wire transfer screenshots from his bank app, which had remembered him, the photographs of the warehouse on Route 9 that he had saved in a folder named with breathtaking simplicity, Tuesday. She closed the laptop exactly as she had found it. She returned the chair to the angle he had left it. She walked up the back staircase to the bedroom where her fiancé was already asleep and slid under the covers beside him. He turned in his sleep and rested his hand on her hip the way he always did. She did not move it. She lay in the dark, listening to him breathe, and thought about how strange it was to share a bed with a man who was at that very moment dreaming the dream of a man who had nearly succeeded in killing her. The thing that frightens us most in the end is rarely the violent stranger. It is the person who has been close enough for long enough to learn the shape of our day, the hour we leave, the way we hold our phone, the car we never check, the fiancé who knows the dosage of our headache medicine and the date of our husband's death. Some relationships end because love runs out. Others end because somewhere along the way, one person stops seeing the other as a person at all and starts seeing them as a route, a door into a life they want, a door eventually out of it. Ava Harrington did not sleep that night. She lay in the dark beside the man who was going to try to have her killed in the morning, and for the first time in 8 years, she did not think about her schedule. She thought about how she was going to take her life back. Morning came gray and slow. Ava rose at 5:30, the way she had risen for 8 years, and made herself a cup of Earl Grey in the same porcelain cup she had used every morning of her widowhood. She watched Ethan come down the stairs in his robe at 6:15, exactly as he always did, and she kissed him on the cheek in the kitchen because that was what she always did, and she said good morning in the voice he had heard her use 1,000 times. He looked at her with the careful tenderness of a man checking on a fragile thing. "How is your head?" "Better. I think I can fly today after all. Patricia called late last night. The Denver meeting cannot wait." "Are you sure, sweetheart? You looked terrible yesterday." "I am sure. I will sleep on the plane." He nodded. He did not push. He kissed her temple and went to pour himself coffee with the easy posture of a man whose morning had just clicked into place. Ava watched the back of his head from the breakfast counter and felt for the first time that she was not afraid of him. Fear had become something colder and more useful overnight. She finished her tea. She set the cup in the sink. She went upstairs to change. She put on the navy suit. She put on the pearl earrings her late husband had given her on their 10th anniversary. She put a small recording device into the inner pocket of her jacket and a second tracker the size of a quarter into the lining of her left shoe. Patricia had brought both at 4 in the morning when she had let herself in through the kitchen door with the spare key. At 7:15, Ava walked down the front steps of the house. The SUV was waiting. The same stranger from the previous morning stood beside it in the same suit with the same unmarked left hand. He opened the door for her. She got in. She did not look back at the house. She did not need to. She knew Ethan was watching from the window of his study the way he had watched her leave on 100 other mornings, and she let him have the satisfaction of his last clean view of her. The SUV pulled out of the drive at 7:18. For the first 6 miles, the driver took the route Ava knew. The county road, the long left at the reservoir, the rise toward the highway interchange that led to her airfield. She let her gaze rest on the back of his head and counted her breaths the way a swimmer counts strokes. At the interchange, instead of bearing right toward the airfield, he bore left. She felt it in her stomach before she saw it on the road signs. She did not say anything. She had decided in the long, dark hours of the previous night that she would let him drive until he stopped. Speaking too early would only spook him into doing something Patricia could not protect her from. The road narrowed. The buildings thinned. They passed an old propane yard, a closed gas station, a stretch of empty fields with broken wire fencing along the shoulder. After 15 miles of this, the driver turned onto a gravel access road that ran along the back of an abandoned freight depot. The signs on the fence had not been touched in a decade. The pavement gave way to packed dirt. He stopped the SUV in front of a steel rolling door at the side of the largest warehouse. He did not get out right away. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Ava could hear through the thin partition of the cabin the voice on the other end. She had slept beside that voice for 2 years. "She's here," the driver said. "Everything quiet on your side." The voice on the phone said something brief. Ava could not catch the words, only the tone, which was the tone of a man whose morning was going exactly as he had planned. The driver ended the call. He set the phone face down on the passenger seat. Then he turned very slowly and looked at Ava through the partition. His face was younger than she had expected. Late 20s, maybe early 30s. His eyes did not look like the eyes of a man who killed people for a living. They looked like the eyes of a man who had run out of options some time ago and had agreed to something he had not let himself fully picture until this morning. He got out. He came around to her door. He opened it. "Step out, please, ma'am." Ava did not move. "I am not getting out of this car," she said. "Ma'am, please." "What is your name?" He blinked. The question she could see was not in the script he had been given. "That's not your business, ma'am." "Then I will tell you mine. Ava Harrington. The woman whose name is on the insurance policy you are about to make pay out. The woman whose fiancé you have been working for. Whose fiancé is at this exact moment sitting in my kitchen drinking my coffee while you stand here in the cold." The man's jaw moved. He did not answer. "What did he tell you my name was when he hired you? Did he even use it?" "Get out of the car, ma'am." "How much?" "What? How much is he paying you?" The man's mouth tightened. $75,000. $75,000, Ava said. "To kill a woman whose estate is worth $400 million. Do you know how much his gambling debt is?" "I'm not interested. $4,100,000. To a man in Atlantic City named Devlin. I know because I read the emails last night. I know because my attorney has copies. I know because there is right now a bureau agent named Reyes who has been briefed on this conversation and is somewhere within 5 miles of where we are standing." "You're bluffing." "Am I? Take the tracker out of my left shoe and look at it." He did not take the tracker out of her shoe. He looked at her instead. He looked at her for a long time, the way a man looks at a piece of furniture he has just realized is going to fall on him. "Get out of the car, ma'am," he said again, but the words had lost something between the first time he had said them and the third. "I want you to think about something," Ava said. Her voice was very calm. She had spent a lifetime making her voice calm in rooms where the men across the table had wanted her to be afraid. "Ethan Cole owes a man in Atlantic City $4,100,000. He is paying you $75,000 to kill me. The math does not work. Do you understand what I am telling you? He cannot pay both. He is not going to pay both. After today, you are the only living person on earth who knows what he did. What do you imagine he is going to do with that fact?" The man's eyes moved just slightly toward the warehouse. "He picked you because you don't have a connection to him on paper," Ava said. "He picked you because no one will look for you if you disappear. That is what no connection to him on paper means on the back end. It means there is no one to ask where you went." The man reached into his jacket. He brought out a pistol. He held it across the open door of the SUV, pointed loosely at her chest. His hand was shaking. Not much, just enough. "Shut up," he said. "My name is Ava Harrington," she said. "You can tell that to a jury, or you can hear me out for 30 more seconds. If you shoot me right now, the federal investigators who are already in motion this morning will find me in this warehouse with your prints on the trigger and Mr. Cole's wire transfer to a burner account in your name from 4 weeks ago. You will die in a state prison. He will go to a country without an extradition treaty. He has the passport. You do not. I checked. You're lying about the agents." Am I? Look at the tree line on the ridge behind the building. The white sedan. It has been there since before we arrived. He did not look. He did not have to look. The fact that he did not turn his head was the moment Ava knew she was going to live. "If you put the gun down," she said, "and you turn this car around and drive me back out to the county road, I will tell every officer who asks me that you saved my life. I will tell them you were threatened. I will tell them you have cooperated from the first moment. I have enough money to put you somewhere with a different name and a different life, and I will do it. That is something Ethan Cole cannot offer you because Ethan Cole does not have it. I do." The phone on the passenger seat began to ring. The screen lit up with a name. Ethan. The man looked at the phone. He looked at Ava. He looked at the warehouse door. He did not answer the phone. It rang 9 times. Then it went silent. His hand still holding the gun lowered very slowly until the barrel was pointing at the gravel. "Get down in the seat," he said. His voice had gone hoarse. "Put your head below the window. Don't sit up until I tell you." She did what he said. He closed her door. He walked around to the driver's side. He got in. He put the gun on the passenger seat next to the phone, which had begun to ring again. He did not look at either of them. He put the SUV in reverse. He backed it down the gravel access road slowly all the way to the asphalt, and then he turned it around. They had driven less than 300 yards when the white sedan came up the road from the other direction, with 2 more vehicles behind it. The driver of the SUV stopped the car. He put both his hands on the steering wheel where they could be seen. He did not move. Ava sat up. She did not cry. She did not shake. She looked through the windshield at the federal vehicles arriving at the end of her old life, and she understood for the first time in many years that she had just become a person she did not yet know. Patricia met her at the county sheriff's station an hour later. There was paperwork. There were statements. There were 2 agents named Reyes and Holloway who were extremely polite and asked the same questions in 3 different ways. The driver, whose name turned out to be Dwayne Marsh, had begun talking in the back of the patrol car before they had even reached the highway and had not stopped. By the time Ava had finished her own statement, the prosecutor's office had enough to arrest Ethan Cole at the front gate of the property. Ava asked to be there when it happened. Patricia said no. Patricia said it would not look good on the record that prosecutors did not like victims who staged confrontations, that she should let the system do what the system did. Ava asked again. Patricia, who had been her attorney for 16 years, looked at her across the small interview room and said, "All right, but you do not touch him. You do not raise your voice. You stand in the room. That is all." Ava agreed. They drove back to the house in Patricia's car. The agents went in first. By the time Ava walked into the front room, Ethan was already standing with his hands behind his back, 2 officers on either side of him, his face the color of old paper. He had not yet been told what the charges were. He had been told only that he needed to come with them. He had been waiting Ava could see for the call from Dwayne that would let him know it was over. He had been refreshing his phone every few minutes for the last 45. When he saw her come through the front door, alive in her navy suit with Patricia at her shoulder, and her own composure perfectly intact, he made a small sound in his throat that she would remember for the rest of her life. It was not a sound of fear. It was the sound a man makes when the floor of his understanding gives way under his feet. She walked across the room until she was 3 feet from him. She did not get any closer than that. She set a small recording device down on the side table beside him, and she nodded at Patricia, and Patricia opened a folder of printed emails and laid the top page where he could see it. He looked at the page. He looked at the recorder. He looked at her. "Ava," he said, "do not call me that." The officer shifted. Patricia raised one finger not at Ava, but at them, a gesture that meant, "Let her have this 1 minute." They waited. Ava looked at the man she had been engaged to for 14 months. She looked at his hands, which she had once thought beautiful. She looked at his mouth, which had spoken her name in the dark 1,000 times. She felt no rage. The rage had burned through her in the night, and had left in its place a kind of clean, cold curiosity. "I am going to ask you one question," she said. "I am not going to ask it twice. I am not going to ask it later in a courtroom through a lawyer. I am going to ask it once here. And then I am going to walk out of this room and I am not going to see you again." He did not speak. "Was there ever a moment," she said, "in 2 years when you loved me?" He looked at her for a long time. She had expected him to lie. She had braced herself for the lie. The lie would have been kinder than what he did. "The first 6 months," he said. His voice was very quiet. "Maybe. I don't know anymore. After that, I just felt myself getting smaller next to you. Every day. I kept waiting for the feeling to come back. It didn't." Ava nodded once. She did not say anything for a moment. She was not afraid of the silence anymore. "I understand that," she said finally. "I have felt myself getting smaller next to people before. The difference is that I left them. You decided to erase me." He opened his mouth. He closed it again. The officer stepped forward. Patricia touched Ava's elbow very lightly, and Ava turned and walked out of the room without looking back. She did not watch them put him in the car. That night, Ava sat alone in the library on the second floor of the great house. She had not turned on any of the lamps. She had a glass of water beside her that she had not touched. The moon came in through the tall windows and lay across the rug in pale rectangles. There was a small knock at the door. Maya was standing in the hallway in a sweater too large for her. Patricia's brother-in-law had driven her and Elijah back from Carmel that afternoon. Ava had given them the small guest cottage by the orchard for the time being until they all decided what came next. Maya was holding a glass of water in both hands. She walked across the rug and set it down on the small table beside Ava's chair beside the glass that was already there. Then she stood there looking at her the way she had looked at her in the cottage 2 mornings before. "Are you okay?" Maya asked. Ava felt something move through her chest that had nothing to do with Ethan or the warehouse or the $400 million he had failed to take from her. "I am better than I was yesterday," she said. "Thank you." Maya nodded. She looked at the books on the shelves. Then she looked back at Ava, and she said in the simple way that children say things they do not yet know are difficult. "Mrs. Ava, do you know my dad's name?" Ava's mouth opened. For a fraction of a second, she almost said it. Elijah. Elijah Brooks. The name she had only learned the morning before 2 days ago, after 6 years of walking past the man who carried it. "His name is Elijah Brooks," she said. "That's right." Maya smiled very small. Then she said the way she might have remarked on the weather, "My dad has talked about you sometimes. He says you always look tired in the mornings. He hopes you're okay." She did not say it as an accusation. She did not know enough about the world yet to make it an accusation. She said it the way a child reports a fact. Then she turned and walked back out of the library, leaving the second glass of water beside the first. Ava sat in the dark for a long time after the door closed behind her. She thought about 6 years of mornings. She thought about a man who had walked past her every day, who had carried the small worry of whether she was all right home with him at the end of his work, and had told his daughter about her often enough that a 9-year-old could repeat it back without thinking. She thought about all the people who had passed through her life during those 6 years. The agents, the lawyers, the publicists, the fiancé. She thought about which of them had noticed her the way Elijah Brooks had noticed her. The way a person notices someone they have decided to pay attention to without being asked. She thought about how many other people she had passed every day for years in offices and elevators and lobbies whose names she had never learned. People who possibly had carried small private worries home about her without her knowing. The thing that is hard about this story is not the part with the gun or the warehouse or the man who tried to have a woman killed for her money. Those things happen in the world. They have always happened. They will keep happening as long as some people have too much and other people are willing to do anything to take it. The hard part is the second glass of water on the table. The hard part is that in the long 6 years before any of this happened, a man had been doing his work quietly in her garden, and a child had been doing her homework quietly in her greenhouse, and they had both known her name, and she had not known theirs. It is possible to live an entire life this way. Most people do. They become important to a small number of people and stop noticing the rest. The rest keep noticing them sometimes for decades in the soft, small way that costs nothing and changes nothing until the one morning it changes everything. It took an attempted murder for Ava Harrington to learn the name of the man who had been saving her by small acts of attention for 6 years before he ever had to do it with words. Most of us are not so lucky. Most of us never find out. It is worth some time today looking around. There is almost certainly an Elijah somewhere near you, a person who has known your name longer than you have known theirs, a person who, if it ever came to it, would tell you the truth on the morning when the truth could cost them everything. You might ask them their name before the morning comes.